Hey, what's up everybody? Welcome to another episode of B is for Build. I'm Chris. In this episode, it's down to the fun stuff. We're doing the final assembly, well, what I hope is the final assembly of the Lotus Evora. This weekend, I'm gonna try and get things like the roof on there, the windshield on there, and a bunch of other key components, and hopefully by the time we're done, it's gonna look a lot like a finished car. This episode is proudly sponsored by Metromile. I'm really excited about this sponsor because it happens to be my car insurance company. Metromile is a car insurance company. I've been a customer of theirs for about a year and a half, and I get asked all the time how I can have so many cars and how I can keep them all insured, and doesn't that cost me a lot of money? Way back when, before Metromile, I used to waste so much money on traditional style car insurance, and when I switched over to Metromile, I saved, this is gonna sound crazy, but I saved like about $300 per month, which for you math wizards, that's $3,600 a year, which is probably enough to buy the beginnings of your next project car. The way that the Metromile works and how it saves so much money is that you pay a small base price per month for your car. So all my cars that I have that are sitting around that I'm not using, like for instance today, so I got the BRZ out front, I got another BRZ back home, I got the S2000 at home, got all these cars everywhere, right? Well, they're just sitting there, and so you pay a small base price per month to keep them protected. If somebody breaks into them, a tree falls on them, all that sort of stuff. That's a small base price, keeps them protected. Then Metromile only charges you per mile on the car that you're driving. So I drove my Charger to the shop today, I'm gonna pay for that one, but only that one. Traditional car insurance models are, you're gonna pay full price for every single one of your cars. So I would pay full price for the BRZ here, full price no matter how many miles I drive. Well, I thought that was very unfair. I used to whine about it all the time. I say, hey, why am I paying full price when you know I can't drive two cars at the same time? Well, Metromile is great for us car enthusiasts for that reason. So if you have an extra project car, or you're in a multi-car household, or you just don't drive as much as a normal person, you are gonna save boatloads of money. But specifically for car enthusiasts like myself, this was one of the keys that really allowed me to move on from where I was like two cars or three cars, and I kept calling my insurance company and saying, hey, I gotta suspend the policy on this car. And then so for instance, the S2000, it's a convertible. I love to drive it during the summer, but it is expensive to insure. So I would suspend the policy, where you still pay a base price per month because you want it to be covered if it's gonna get broken into or something like that. And then I'd have to get on the phone with them, my old car insurance company, and say, hey, can you put on my policy back on? Nothing more lame than trying to have a nice drive in your project car or your car that you're like super amped about, and then having to make a phone call for 15 minutes on the car insurance company, and then they normally try and sell you extra stuff. Anyways, with Metromile, that is not a problem, and I'm super happy that they were down to sponsor this episode. I'm super happy to be working with them because I stand behind their product 100%. Like I said, I've used it for a very, very, very long time. Metromile also has a really great app. One of the things that stood out with me about Metromile is that they are a pretty high-tech company. They seem to really understand technology. My other insurance company, they seem like they started by insuring, they just seem like insurance for old people. They didn't move with the times, you know? I don't want to get too far into it, but Metromile has a sweet app. I think it's on iOS and Android. I'm pretty positive. And I could check, you could check vehicle health, you could check where your vehicles are, you could check your policy, you could check your rates, you know exactly how much money you're gonna be spending on your insurance at all times. All that stuff is really, really great. And I just think that they really kind of are in tune with technology and moving forward versus some of the other companies seem a little stuck in the past. So like I said, guys, people ask me all the time for a long, long time, how do I afford to insure all these cars at once? And Metromile really, really is the answer. So thank Metromile for sponsoring this episode. Now let's get down to work. Stay tuned. All right, first thing I want to do on this is stop talking so much and show some progress. So, back seats, let's do them. All right, our rear quarter panel, our interior rear quarter panel is in and installed. That happened kind of fast. I kind of realized once I had bolted it all the way in there that I didn't really even say goodbye to the wires behind there and make sure that they're all good, but I made sure everything was plugged in and they were all good actually. I just didn't really didn't really study them. I looked at that cable and I thought, like, where does that go? And I was like, nah, I don't know. Doesn't really matter though. Wherever it goes is where it's still going, and I'm sure it went there before and it'll continue to go there. So this panel is in and installed, and it took quite a while because it meant that we had to install that door hatch there. We installed the seatbelt rail behind there, and we installed the seatbelt mount up top for the back seat seatbelt. But everything went in great. I happen to have all the bolts laying around for all of these mounts, and yeah, easy peasy. So let's go ahead and do the other side. We got the interior installed. Everything went together pretty well. Everything's like fitting up nicely. The back corner over here does have a little bit of damage that I didn't know about. If you guys remember, when we disassembled this car, especially the interior, it was super toxic. We had to use respirators. Everything was covered in mold. So I didn't do a lot of research on the parts. So that is part of that quarter panel that goes up, and that little corner is busted. So what you see on the other side is one that's together. Over here, it's a little bit busted off, and that cushion is a little bit bent down. It can't really be bent back. So luckily though, these parts are very affordable and very reasonably priced for the Evora, because what a lot of people do is they take all this stuff out when they build these into race cars, and it happens pretty frequently. So I'll be able to buy these interior parts pretty easily online. I'm gonna wait around until I can find a good deal, and to be honest, I'll probably replace a majority of these things. I think I even lost one of the head cushions. I have to look around, but I don't think I have the head cushion over there. So I'll be replacing like that quarter panel, that back panel, the head cushions, and some other things. It's kind of cool that they're super lightweight, so they'll be able to ship them over from the UK. It won't cost me an arm and a leg. It's very, very nice componentized interior, so I don't have to worry about it too much. But overall, it all came together nicely, and once we have the headliner in here, that'll barely be a noticeable spot anyways. Obviously not having a head cushion will be pretty damn noticeable, but I'll try and figure that out in the short term. So the next thing we got to do to keep going on the interior here is down there. Let me show you actually down here. You have these two mounts right there. That's where a bar gets mounted across so the seat belt strap can mount into it. That way they have the anchor points from inside the frame and right here on the bar. So I'm going to go ahead and get that all set up and installed on both sides. All right, we got the seatbelt mounts, lower end mounts, and the plastic surrounds all installed. So I was kind of wondering what was going to fill up that space where the carpet was, but that is the answer. So then what goes here is there's these big leather pads that kind of go here and cover up the side panel, and that's the end of that. So while I have the windshield not installed, I'm going to go ahead and move on to figuring out how to remove this piece. All right, passenger airbag panel cover is off. That was a particularly brutal way to remove it, but I think the way that you're supposed to do it involves removing the entire dash panel, like this whole thing, and I wasn't willing to do that right now, so we just kind of bent it back and forth until we could snap it off. And now I am shopping online, and I'm waiting until a used airbag system comes on for sale online, and as soon as it does, I'll pick that up and I'll install it in this car. So this is just temporary for the time being to get that out of my way, especially while I install the windshield. Okay, so moving on, I want to install the side panels and the trim for the side door panels of the car. We've got our side trim on the whole side panel going all the way around. It looks really nice. It cleaned up nicely. And then we have our kick panels in here that look fantastic. I love that Lotus logo right there. It really is a nice finishing point to this car. It just looks beautiful. So that's all in there. Now, you know, there's an order of ways that you put these pieces on, and we kind of got a little bit ahead of ourselves. We probably don't even need this side molding on here quite yet. Hopefully we won't have to take it back off, but because there's, for instance, a piece that goes around here. That's why you see these little things right here. Those are actually covers that are around bolts that we throw nuts on when we bolt in I think it's an A-pillar cover after you put the windshield onto this piece actually. So we're gonna just hit the brakes now on the interior stuff and move over to the front. So on the front end, there's quite a few miscellaneous things we need to do. This is my temperature sensor. It got cut off in the Wrek somehow, so I need to attach that. This hose is still kinked in my AC system. I've ordered a new one from Lotus and we are waiting on that. So there is a certain level to where I'm gonna stop early on this, because we're gonna have to break it down to at least be able to access this much. Actually, gonna have to take the clamshell off once again to replace that hose eventually. Now that's AC. I'm stuck coming up into winter right now, so I don't need AC right now. But since I have the part coming in probably like 5 days, I don't really want to do like a final assembly of this front clamshell without that. But I do want to do a shakedown and a test drive before that. So I'm going to have to make up my mind and see how far I take this. But I think it's time to move on to the front end. So I'm just going to go ahead and slide the car around and wing it. Start working on it. All right, we got good progress coming along. I've done a lot of miscellaneous stuff, and I mounted up the horns. So let's do a quick little horn test. Yep, horns work. I expected them to be a little bit louder because there's two of them, but I guess that's just how they are. So got horns installed, got the ambient temp sensor installed. It is 66 degrees Fahrenheit in my shop right now. And I got a lot of other stuff kind of squared away. Oil coolers installed. So I think what I'm going to do is I lost a part, which is quite a bummer. So there's this bracket right here. This is a fender. Oh, I need that. This is a fender bracket that mounts on the side of the car over there, and we bolted up, and that's what the fender sits on. So it is just a 90-degree bend and a piece of metal. So I'm going to go ahead and recreate this so I can have two fender brackets, and I can figure out where exactly the clamshell sits on both of the sides. All right, the other angle bracket was created. It was super easy to make. It's just an angle bracket, like I said, so I could have went down to the hardware store and got any piece of metal. One thing I did was I welded in a support right in the, where it makes a 90-degree turn, so it won't have any ability to kind of flex and bend. So this is the one that came with the car, and I bolted it on here loosely. I'm gonna go ahead and grab that side fender piece and start working it on here, see how it fits and how it's gonna mate up with the front clamshell. All right, well, research was very short-lived, but good news. So it just turns out to be very simple. 2 bolts in the bottom of this piece, then I have one longer bolt with a massive washer on the bottom. This piece slides right underneath the bracket, then the bolt goes through the bracket from the bottom, bolts into the front clamshell. So to bolt these up, we need the front clamshell. So I think it's time to move back over to the front, tidy up the wires and stuff like that, and throw our front clamshell back on and start bolting it all on for reals. Alright guys, so I got Adrian here, so I have two sets of hands. So while we are both here and we're both working on the car, I want to go ahead and utilize that and do the things that take 2 people, like the roof and the windshield. So we're going to move straight onto that, leave the front where it is. So to do the roof, what we're going to do is I'm going to pull the old roof out of the rafters and look at all the spots where it's primered and look at the map of kind of where they have laid the polyurethane adhesive. We use the same polyurethane adhesive that we put on the side panels to mount the roof to the side panels and the other structures. So, but before we can do that too, we also need to come across here and clean up any of the excess rubber. So there's a little bit like right here, there's a little bit here, and there's some in the back. So I'm going to quickly clean up our surface. Then we're going to be primering the car and primering my new roof panel, which is over there, and then we'll glue it on. Alright guys, you know the deal. We've done this a lot. So we cleaned up all the excess rubber. I've mapped out exactly where I need to prime, where the mating spots between this and the roof are. We're going to go ahead and paint, we're going to prime the car now. So we're going to fill in all this white stuff where the primer has chipped off on this part. And we're actually going to re-prime it all. And then we're going to lay for the first time, we're going to do primer around these strips everywhere where we're going to want to apply the adhesive to the roof. So we're going to prime the car, and the roof right now, and then let it dry up before we run our adhesive and stick it on. All right, so it's go time on the roof. Adrian and I have practiced multiple times how we're gonna hand the roof over and how we're gonna set it down and hopefully not have to wiggle it around. We've obviously primered the car and primered the roof up nicely. So next thing we're gonna do is we're gonna take our pneumatic caulking gun. We're gonna lay the beads that we need to around here, and then we're gonna, like we practiced, hand the roof over and hopefully set it down nicely and gently adhering it to the car. We really can't mess this up. Roofs are hard to come by. Roof install was a great success. The gun did spit out a little extra than we wanted, but hey, better safe than sorry. Now the only thing that I'm worried about is checking, make sure we have enough to do the windshield, because if you run out, obviously then you're in big trouble. So I'll figure that out. Can't tell if I smudged the black on there or not, but we'll clean that up later. So yeah, walking around, you can kind of see we have a little bit of extras, and what I'm going to do with that is I'll just use a razor blade, chop that off after it dries. It's really good at kind of coming off of stuff that you don't want it on after it's dried. As long as the stuff isn't primered, it'll come off without trouble. But yeah, overall, the roof is on really nicely. So then the next step is to primer that roof line, primer this side line, re-primer this, and then stick our windshield in, if we have enough glue. All right, well, I checked the caulking gun and we actually ran out of the caulking in the tube, so we have no more adhesive to do the windshield. So we're gonna move on to another mainly two-person job, which is the doors. Since I have Adrian here to lend me a hand, we're gonna go ahead and set the doors in here. Now this is a spot where I am especially nervous, because it means that if the side panels are on in the wrong angle or anything else like that, it's gonna show up in the doors, which could be catastrophic. So this is actually the last spot between the wheel clearance and the door clearance is the last two nervous points I have in this build. So let's go ahead and get the doors on and see how they shut, see how they fit, and if we can make them line up right. All right, so we have the door lightly bolted in, rested on the hinges, and this is also loose. And here's what I'm gonna try and use to get an equal spacing all around is tile spacers that you can get at a hardware store. So these are a set with all of them. And so what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna lay them across and then close the door slowly so it lays on them, and that'll give us an even gap all the way around, similar to how you do tiles in a home. And then we'll go ahead, and once we have that, it shuts nicely and everything, we'll tighten down on the hinges and then open this, hoping that this will stay in the right area, and then tighten that down as well. Then we can do some more test fitting. But really what we're gonna use these tile spacers for is to measure, keep an equal width, but also not mess up the paint by shutting the door and scraping up the paint between the kick panel and the door. I've never done this before, but I think it's a good idea. So fingers crossed, and here we go. All right, I think we've done everything properly. This is the first test close. Oh, I thought something was tapping, but that's just the door making contact with the striker. And then it closes, and it looks good. So we have one nicely installed door. We're gonna go ahead and go to the other side and do the same thing. All right, so it was at this point when I was gonna go ahead and throw the clamshell on and then bolt up the headlights and bolt up the front bumper, and everything was gonna be magical and happy and wonderful. And then Adrian and I noticed that this body panel does not match up with this one. And now we've been fiddling with things and stuff like that, so like kind of discard this stuff. Here's what happened. And the root of the problem is, if you remember way back, there's a support that runs through here. And we fiberglassed it back onto the clamshell, thinking that it was probably stayed in relatively the right spot that it needed to be in. And that was incorrect. So what we've done here is we have supported it, kind of kicked out a little bit too much more than it needs to be. Not to mention that since we made a catastrophic mistake when we went ahead and decided to build the whole front end without matching the clamshell up with the door. So we built the front end supports, built all the mounting points over here and all this stuff without really having the door as a reference point. So everything needs to go back a little bit, it needs to go up a little bit, and this needs to go in a little bit before we can continue. The good part of things going up is we gain more wheel clearance in the front, which is good. The bad part means that we have days and days of work to redo. We have headlight mounts to redo. We have to modify our front mount. We need to change that support in there. So I'm gonna do that stuff in the next episode. It's been a long weekend. We got a lot of great work done, and we found our largest problem now. Hey, the doors fit up, so we don't have to chop up the side panels. At least this is something that we know why it's wrong. We know how to fix it. So thank you guys so much for tuning in. I want to thank our sponsor once again, Metro Mile. There's a link in the description. Check out Metro Mile. I hope it can save you a bunch of money on your car insurance. I know it sure did for me. If you like BS for Build and you want to help support BS for Build, head over to bsforbuild.com. Scroll down to the shop. There is new stuff in there. There's new women's t-shirts in there, and we restock some of the other good shirts. So head there, check it out. Pick up a hat or a shirt or something. All the proceeds go towards helping me fix clamshells. What else? If you want to find us in more places, head over to facebook.com/BSforBuild, and we are BS for Build on Instagram. Thank you guys so much for watching and tuning in. I can't wait to get back onto this in the midweek episode. Please remember to like and subscribe. Peace!